Welcome to the Awaken You podcast, where we break down relationship barriers by awakening your true you. I'm Coach Christine, and the two of us, you and me, we will be doing this work together because this process isn't about changing your partner. It's about discovering who you are so that you can awaken you in your marriage. Well, welcome everyone. Today I have Candice Toone with me to talk about relationships and relationship coaching and marriages in particular specifically. And Candice, I have been admiring from afar. She's a life coach school master certified coach. I'm going to have her tell us all about what that means and why I think it's a big deal. She coached me several times in the Life Coach School Scholars Program. And I'm pretty sure she's coached me on my relationship at least once, because I'm pretty sure every coach in there has done that. And that's just to say that we help people in their relationships, but all of us still need help.
Totally.
So Candace, first, you got to tell us what a master certified coach is, a little bit about the blood, sweat, and tears, and yeah, tell us.
Okay, perfect. So, like Christine said, I am a master certified life coach, which means that I went through the initial coach training through the life coach school. And then on top of that, I was invited to participate in a smaller scale. There was just 20 of us that went in two groups of 10. We went to Grand Cayman with Brooke and her team of master certified life coaches, and they just worked us for an entire week. And then before we went, there was work to do. We had to read some books, do some projects, coach each other, get feedback on that coaching. We went for the intensive with Brooke, and then when we got back, we did a project that was supposed to change us and the world. And then we had to submit samples of coaching to be approved. So I wrote a book on how to become a unicorn, and that's available for download on my website just for free if you want it. But it tells you how to step out of the thoughts you've got that are holding yourself back, and how to be exactly what you're supposed to be.
I love that, because unicorns, bees.
I know,
I mean,
it's
who
a
doesn't
zoo
love
over
all
here.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. We'll get into the bees in a little bit. So yes, that is a lot to be admired. And just going to that deeper level of learning how to help people and yourself, right?
Yeah, a lot of the master coach training was cleaning up our own thinking about ourselves so that we can clear the blocks to help those around us.
Yes, yes, because that is true. That's why it's so important that coaches get coached.
Yes, everyone needs a life coach.
Right, right. And so it's kind of something that, if you're actually looking for a coach, to make sure that they're actually doing the work on themselves, which I don't know why anybody wouldn't once they find out how amazing coaching is. But so tell us a little bit more about yourself, besides that you're a master certified coach, a
Yeah.
little bit about your journey, and how your life journey and how that brought you to life coaching, and helping women realize that they are married to the right guy.
Yeah. So I was a therapist before I was a coach. That's what I did all of my formal college training in. I got my bachelor's and master's degrees. I had 2 master's degrees in counseling. Spent all my formative training in psychology, and worked in a variety of capacities as a therapist. And I participated as a client as a therapist as well. And I just didn't quite get what I wanted out of therapy. I think there's a place for it for sure. And there's lots of good things that come from it. But when I found coaching, that's when my life really took off and my relationship really seemed to shift. It's because in many ways, therapy is like a disease model, which looks at correcting problems that are existing that you need some outside help for, which again, I totally am a fan of therapy and still think there's a place for it. But for people who are basically functioning and just kind of not quite to the disease model level, coaching is perfect for that because it puts the power exactly where it needs to be. So I found coaching through Jody Moore's podcast, and I wasn't actually an enthusiast when I very first listened to it. I was like, what, this lady, what is she saying? And I turned it off, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I kept coming back to it and coming back to it. And eventually I joined Jody's program and got a lot of leverage for myself. And then I decided I want to do this for my job. And now what I do is I spend my days helping women stop wondering if they married the wrong guy. They either will decide that, yes, this is the place I'm supposed to be, or nope, this is not what I want anymore. And then they feel confident with either decision. This is the work we do together.
I love that. Yeah. So you found Jody before you found the life coach school.
I did, but it was like, I'm a snap decision maker. And so I found Jody. I was in her program for about 6 weeks before I signed up for the life coach school.
Oh, I love that. That's great. So we have to talk a little bit about the bees. Tell me a little bit about the story of you waiting for your son to get his teeth cleaned, watching what was playing on the screen, and which was the bee movie, and how that little bit, like how that clicked for you, that was kind of an analogy of how you help people.
Yeah. So if you're part of my coaching community, I refer to you all as my bees. And it's for several reasons. One, I'm from Utah, which is the beehive state. So makes sense. My husband's initials are BZT, which if you say it fast, sounds like a bee noise. So his grandma always like gives him bee stuff. So it's kind of like a thing in our family anyway. And then, like you said, I was taking my son to get his teeth cleaned, and they had the movie playing in the ceiling. And it was the introduction to the bee movie. And it says, bees shouldn't be able to fly. Their fat little bodies are too big for their wings. And then the ending is, but the bee flies anyway because bees don't care what humans think is impossible. And I was like, that's it. I had already like been in coach training. I had just finished. And I was like, yes, I'm going to use bees who don't care what humans think is impossible to help women learn to listen to their own voices. Because everyone has an opinion about what we should do with our lives. Our moms, our sisters, our best friends, our husbands, they all think something and they're like, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do this, or there's lots of like holding down of dreams and of changes. And the group of bees that we're in, we don't care. We don't care what other people say we can't do. It's not that we don't care about them. We just don't care about their opinions if their opinions are getting in our way.
Right. I love that because that's kind of the whole thing, even in relationships. Like we grow up with these relationship models and expectations of what a relationship should look like. And we keep looking back to that, right? And not even really realizing that we can create our own sort of relationship, right? So you did mention that when you joined Jody's program, you were applying it to your relationship. So in therapy, were you focusing mostly on like marital relationships?
Yep.
I
was a marriage and family therapist before. My husband and I went to couples counseling multiple times, just because of like general, like we came from really different backgrounds and it's hard. Everyone who's been married knows that it can be a challenge to try and merge two worlds, especially when we both have expectations about how that was going to go. And it was kind of rocky for us.
Yeah. So you focused when you joined Jody's course, you were focusing on that. So, and maybe you just said that, but I didn't catch it. Did you actually go in therapy and then in Jody's program into the relationship and marriage genre? Totally isn't the right word for it, but
I think I know what you mean. Like that was my focus of my work.
Yeah, because of your interest in making your relationship better. Or tell me a little bit more about like your relationship journey, and like because you were a therapist, you understand the value of seeking help.
Totally.
Um, and what did your husband think of that? Like you
Yeah.
said that
So like I dated my husband for 9 years before we got married. So he knew what he was getting into. Like I had already gotten all of my degrees like while we were dating. So he knew that that was a fascination of mine. Like I said, I was a marriage and family therapist before I was even married. I worked in residential treatment in my undergrad. So I've always been interested in relationships, family relationships, marriage relationships. It's always been a thing for me. And then my husband and I like came from different backgrounds. Like I said, we have different faiths. We came from what you might describe as different socioeconomic statuses. So our parents, like they told us like there's one up and one down family, like which family was the better family. And there's lots of, which there's no such thing as a better family, but there was some insecurities that went along around that. And then like we were older when we got married. And so we were kind of more set in our ways, so there was a lot of things that you could say were like working against us. And I thought the solution would be like, well, listen, I'm a marriage and family therapist. So like, just do it my way. And then he didn't do it my way. Like, I'm like, listen, look, do you see the wall where my degrees are hanging? Like, come over here. But of course, that didn't really matter to him because everybody has their own opinion about how they want things to go. And so we had to just like put all the pride aside. Well, I had to put all the pride aside and be like, okay, how can we make this come together in such a way where we can like raise children and like have a life that we both want to have without compromising so much of ourselves that we don't recognize ourselves anymore.
So I love that you said you had to put your pride aside,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things I wanted to ask you is, why do you think people struggle so much, ex- um, not accepting, but deciding to go seek outside help for their relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so, why do you think that's such a struggle? I mean, even from a therapy background and coaching,
I mean,
what does it?
it's really personal for one thing. Like we're sharing really intimate details of how we spend our money or how we approach our sex life, or like there's so many things that you don't talk about in normal, like quotes, normal, like you wouldn't talk about it at a dinner party probably. And so there's that right there, that it's just kind of like maybe a more uncomfortable topic to begin with. And then most people just don't want to be wrong or they don't want to be blamed, which we understand. And in couples, particularly, like usually one person is identified as like the problem, and you don't want to be the problem. It's hard to be the problem. And what we know from coaching is that no one's the problem. No one is, and both of you are, right?
Right, right,
And so it's just nice to be like, listen, nothing's wrong with you. Your brain is doing this spin. This spin's totally optional. It's fine that you're picking it. You have a good reason to pick it. But if you don't want to pick this spin that's causing you pain, there's other options, which is
yeah,
what I love about coaching, because it's not, okay, you're wrong and you have this pathology that we need to either medicate away or label away or something like that, which again, medication and labels have their place for sure. And sometimes that approach doesn't resonate for people. And so it's nice to have this approach as well, where we're like, nothing's wrong with you, actually. You're just making some choices that are maybe not the ones that serve you. And here's how we could clean some of that up if you want to. But if you don't, you're still totally whole and awesome as a person.
right. And seeing that you're producing it and being able to see
Yeah.
that.
You're
So,
producing it, and it's okay that you are. It makes sense actually because of the way that our brains are wired. But
yeah,
now that you know about how our brains are wired, do you still want to keep doing that?
yeah.
And then
What do you
they
want?
get to pick.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're going to do. You don't know what they're
right,
going to do.
right,
But we just get to show them, hey, this is what we're seeing. Is this what you want to keep doing? If not, here's this option. And if so, awesome. Keep going.
right, right. So, what do you say to the woman that? Do you help both men and women, or
I
mostly
don't.
women?
I'm all in on the ladies.
Okay, all right. So, what would you say to a woman who wants something different, but she's afraid to take that first step,
Yeah.
and maybe even afraid to tell her spouse?
I would tell her it makes sense that you're afraid, probably because what you're thinking. probably they're thinking something like, this is too much money, or this is too much time, or there's a lot at stake here. I don't want to rock the boat. This isn't really that bad, maybe. And so most of the clients that I work with talk themselves into like, I'd kind of rather have this uncomfortable that I already know than try something new and it turns out totally different that I don't have any control over, or maybe I won't be successful with it. And so I would tell her, like, listen, based off of what's going on in your head right now, fear makes sense. I totally get it. There's nothing wrong with you. And I know that you have another option. If you don't want to be afraid, like, I believe in you enough right now, client, that you can come with me and borrow my belief until you have some for yourself. But it's fine that you're
Yeah.
scared now. We can do this and be scared. It's fine.
Yeah. And I think that is commonly what they're thinking is they're afraid it won't work.
Right.
How is it different from something else? And that we didn't really dig into. You talked a little bit about the difference between therapy and coaching. And I'm sure you get asked this all the time because of your therapy background. But to help clarify for people, because I think as a society, this this gap is closing, I think, but as a society, when we think we need help, or we're getting to the point where we're ready to seek help, the first thing we think of is therapy.
Mm-hmm. Which works
Um,
really well for people in lots of situations. I have nothing against therapy. And therapy also is, I think, best utilized for people who are like feeling super helpless, super like, I don't know what to do. This is like more than I can handle. I'm kind of breaking down every day. We fight all of the time. Like, it's really kind of like for a non-functional sort of relationship. I think that works best in therapy to get you up to a functional place. And then coaching works really well for like, hey, you're a smart person. I'm a smart person. Let's sit together and workshop your relationship rather than treat it like in a medical sort of way.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I have clients that are doing both, right? They do
Mm,
coaching and therapy together. So
mm,
it really just depends on what kind of support you want. But I think everyone can benefit from coaching. And then some people also want to benefit from therapy. And I think that's awesome. Would
right.
never tell anyone not to, because whatever kind of help is the best kind of help for you is the kind of help you'll go to and that you'll engage in.
Right. Right. If you believe it's going to work,
Totally.
and it's going to work. So tell me, because you work with the woman, same with me. I only work with one partner in the
Mhm.
relationship. What part does the partner play in the journey to getting to a place where they feel happy in their marriage?
Like the husband partner, you mean?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the
For you.
whoever,
Yeah.
like the one that's not in the office with me?
Right. Right.
Might surprise everyone and sometimes makes people mad, but no part. We don't need him to do, him or her, if it's a lesbian couple. They don't need to do anything, which is at the same time awesome news and awful news. Usually people think it's awful news, and I'm like, no, listen, you get to be in charge of everything. And the good news about that is we don't have to wait for your partner to do anything at all.
Yeah. So how do they get over that, that gap of like, wait a minute, so this is all my fault?
Mm-hmm. And I just say, let's be careful with the word fault. Like, what are you making it mean that it's your fault? Does that, um, yeah, we get to decide, like, is fault a bad thing? I don't know. And I like to think of it as like, this is in your control rather than this is like your fault. Because if you caused it, then you can also uncause it or you can stop it. But if husband or partner is the one that's causing it, then we're just kind of at the mercy of the partner. And that's not a fun place to be. Also, what I like to tell women is, listen, if you're not doing the work as a favor to your partner, because when you do the work, you're the one who gets to have the experience of a more in line with what you want relationship. Sure, your partner gets to enjoy that too, but you get to enjoy it. It's not like you're doing all of this work and then they're having all the fun. That's not it. You're
Right.
both having all of the fun, and maybe it's okay if you go first on it.
Yeah. So do you think the partner even needs to know that someone is doing this work?
I mean, I don't think they need to know, but if my client doesn't want to tell them, I would be curious about why.
Right.
And
Right.
it would be fine.
Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, because if you're doing it like behind your partner's back, or you're afraid they won't support you, or like something like that, that's not a great way to set up a relationship that you want to stay in long term, probably. And I would never make them tell their partner, but I might just be like, okay, well, if you're not telling them about this, we're kind of setting up a habit that maybe doesn't breed intimacy. And so I would ask her, like, are you scared? Are you like embarrassed? Like, what's going on here? Because him not, or her not telling the partner also means that like she's got some problems in her relationship with herself. She's not supporting herself in some way. She's not having her own back somehow. No judgment, because all of us have done that. But let's look at that, because the skill of having your own back is going to be really useful no matter what relationship you end up in.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it is thinking that if they tell them that they're going to do this work, that they're admitting it's their fault. That they're,
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And that's something I would just challenge them on. Be like, remember, like nobody's broken here. You're the one who decided to be courageous and go first and look at how your brain is working. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might take us a while to get there, but I would just offer that to her, that there's multiple ways to interpret it, rather than I'm the one who admits that I'm like broken and need to go like be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to talk about the journey from where they start to where they end up. And, at the life coach school, Brooke calls that the river of misery. And it took me a while to really figure out what that was.
Okay.
I mean, I got it, but until I was actually in it, I didn't really quite get it. And for me, I like to describe it as like I have this past self that, I was, and I keep like working to be my future self. And it's like this sticky glue that, as I start, I just keep getting sucked back into her. But as I keep doing the work, you start like pulling apart, and it gets easier to see that this work isn't about you being broken
At all.
This work. Yeah.
Work is about
But
you having options and choosing them on purpose. That's all this is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think they don't have any choices at all, and coaching helps us see that that might not be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So I love that you like right off the bat, like, so right out of high school, you knew you wanted to do relationship counseling. Is that true? Or did you go to college
Yeah.
not knowing?
I always knew that I wanted to do psychology.
Got it.
And
So
I always leaned towards marriage and family therapy, just because I think your marriage is the backdrop for everything in your adult life. It sets up your kids, it sets up everything. And so it's just my mission in life to have as many stable marriages in the world as possible, because then we have a stable community and a stable world and all of it, right? So it sets me on
I
fire
love
to
that.
think about that.
Yeah, I love that. So what when when we look at the container of marriage, and I mean, I love to get to young people, even like really young, before they start developing some of these ideas about themselves and their worthiness and their lovability. But um, in your journey to create the marriage that feels good for you, um, what would you say are some of the most important habits, beneficial habits that you have incorporated into your day to day? And how did you develop them? And habits, meaning like habits that keep your marriage thriving, growing, less mundane.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank you for being so generous in your assessment of my marriage, that we're always like growing and moving. Because the truth is, like, even though I have all of this background in therapy, like sometimes marriage is still crappy, right? Sometimes it's not my favorite. But I still have an answer to your question, which is like the more I can put all of it back on me, not again, not as blame, but just be like, oh, what's happening right now is I'm believing this thing. And so of course I feel that way. Like even in like the throes of an argument, I will say things like to myself as often as possible, I feel upset right now because I'm thinking this thought. And sometimes I'm like, I'm going to hang on to that thought and I'm still going to be mad right now. And that's okay. But I know that it's me that's doing this.
Yeah.
And not like he doesn't have any responsibility at all because he's also thinking a stupid thought that's like making him all upset too. But when I'm like, listen, it's just because of the way that we're thinking, we can take a break. And I used to never want to take a break. I used to be like, no, we're staying here. We're hashing this out. I don't care how long it takes. And he has always been the one that's like, let's just take a break. And I'm like, no, I can't. And I learned that the reason why I can't take a break is because I wasn't a very good friend to me to begin with. And so when I took a break, I'm alone with a bully, my own self, which is like, you did that wrong and you shouldn't have do this. And he doesn't love you anyways. And maybe if you were more this or that, it wouldn't be fighting this way. That's why I didn't want to take a break because I'm not a fun person to be with when I'm
I
taking a break.
Yes, I love that. And I might have you reiterate that so that people get that, because a lot of times we don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, right? Maybe we
Mhm.
just want to be right. But I love that beautiful explanation of why you want to keep that connection, even if it doesn't feel good.
Right.
Because does it feel better than you being alone, beating yourself up?
Yes, it did. Right. At least I
Tell,
thought so.
tell us why.
Even because then I was still there and I didn't have to hear, I was able to blame him then. Right.
Yeah.
I was able to like keep my emotion going out of me, like in a really not healthy way, rather than like sit with my own emotion and be like, yeah, this is what it feels like to be sad. This is what it feels like to be rejected. This is what it feels like. Because I didn't know how to take care of myself through that. And so what I learned, like processing emotion is everything. And if you can figure out how to hold yourself through feeling like crap and be like, I got you. I love you. This is hard. I know. Thanks for doing something that's really hard. It's not always going to be this hard. I'm here with you. Then that kind of break is really healing. So that way you can take the break so you're not continuing to say things that are damaging to the relationship or to yourself. And then when everything's calmed a little bit, you can come back together.
Yeah. I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit on processing emotions, because
Yeah,
emotions don't always feel so great, right? So, why would
totally.
we even want to sit in a pool of digging deeper into anger or
Yeah.
resentment?
Yeah. And the reason why we don't want to, for one thing, is we think that if we feel angry, we have to act angry. And it's such a fine line, but we really don't have to. Right. So if I'm mad, I'm usually, well, we'll just go with mad. If I'm mad, then I think to myself, I can't be mad. That's not a very feminine emotion. That's not a very soft or welcoming emotion. That's not how I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to act that way. And it's true. I don't want to act that way, but I can feel that way. And the difference is instead of like slamming doors or calling names or I don't know, whatever else people do when they're mad, instead you're like, okay, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to take my mad self over here and I'm going to turn off all the thoughts in my brain. I'm not going to think about what a jerk he is or how unfair that was or how he's ruining everything that we planned or like all the things that are making me feel mad. And instead, I'm just going to be like, okay, it's my body's turn to talk right now. I'm going to hold myself through the experience of being a woman who's angry. And that's going into my body and figuring out what the adjectives are. Okay, it's kind of hot. It's right here in my sternum. For me, anger is like one of those twisty light bulbs that's kind of white and like smooth and it's twisted right around my sternum. It's very hot and it's tight pressure. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to think about how long this is going to last or why it's happening. I'm just going to look at that light bulb wrapped around my sternum and breathe through it. And I know it might sound hokey and weird to someone who's never heard of this before, but if you do that sort of thing, what will happen is that like the chemicals will like kind of metabolize out of your body. You're like, okay, look at me. I know how to be angry in my body without acting angry in my life. That's a huge skill. And I'm going to learn from this, like, why was I angry? I probably had a good reason for it. And if I can allow myself to digest it, then my head is going to be clear and I can solve for my problem in a different way. It's not that we don't ever solve for our problems, but when we let the emotion settle, our brain is clearer. So we know what it is that we're solving and we know what options we have.
Yes. Yeah. I love that because it seems counterintuitive to what we
Mhm.
know, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to work this out right now, and that's a natural impulse, right? It's a protective mechanism that
We
we
think it
have.
is. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And just recognizing it as that and like, oh, wait, I'm not really in any danger right now. And, but doing that in the moment doesn't work,
Right.
right? Right.
Right.
So how long do you think it takes for somebody to process their emotions? Because a lot of times people are like, I don't have time for that nonsense.
Yeah. But what I'd ask somebody who told me that is like, do you have time to fight with your spouse for an hour and ruin your whole evening? Like, we have time for that a lot of the times. And so I would
And
just
then ruin
question,
your evening, maybe your next
maybe your
day and the
weekend.
next week.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm like, let's just talk about how much time we're willing to spend because we're willing to scream for a while. So I would first question that. But then in answer to your question, I'd be like, okay, if you're really all in, I would say that most of the time it's 10 minutes or less that it would go out of you. Okay. And you don't have to like go sit in a dark room on a pillow in meditative pose. You can go to the grocery store and do your shopping while you're noticing what's happening on in your body. You can just promise to like turn inward, pay attention to yourself while you're on a walk or while you're doing your run or while you're folding laundry or so you don't have to do only processing emotion. You can, but if you're one of those people who thinks I don't have time, you're like, okay, I'm just going to fold these shirts and watch this light bulb around my sternum.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone has
And
time. It's a lie. It's a lie that you don't have
yeah. And when I first started doing the process of processing emotions, I was like, oh my gosh, why haven't I learned this like when
time.
I was born? Like, because it's like it feels so good. You've got that clarity in your mind. I mean, it's not always that great, but it opens up your mind to start thinking about options and
Yeah,
understanding what's going on. And it feels so good, honestly, people.
for sure. And it feels like crap while you're doing it. Let's be clear about that. But then 10 minutes later, you're like, oh, look at me. I'm so strong. I can be angry without acting angry. I can
Yeah,
be frustrated without treating my kids terrible. I can be sad without like staying awake all night. So it's
yeah.
actually a very powerful skill because your body is designed to process all emotions. We just get in the way.
Right, right. I love that. So I love reading books. I actually saw this morning. So in the morning, during my morning routine, I ride the bike for a little bit. That's when I go on social media and check
Mm.
everybody and, kind of comment and do all of that. And so I was reading, I already forgot the name of the book. It's been several years
Women,
since
food,
I
and
was.
God.
Yes. I'd love to hear why you read that. And I loved that. So I read that several years ago, and it was kind of a couple years ago. So I've struggled with an eating disorder my whole life, um, over half of my life.
Okay.
And so quite early in my journey of exploring coaching. And I think maybe after I got certified or while I was getting certified, I found that book and I read it, and it helped me quite a bit with my eating stuff. But I loved how you compared that to relationships because it's all
Mhm.
kind of the same thing.
Totally.
So you can share a little bit about that book and your insight, what you shared on that post. I would love that. Um, yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, so the book she's referring to is Women, Food, and God by Geneen Roth. And the reason I read it is because Geneen Roth is, I believe, is where Brooke Castillo first started learning the seeds of processing emotion. So, and since processing emotion is like basically the key to the universe, I was like, let's go to the source and read about it. Geneen Roth is like she does weight loss with women. Because weight loss is a really good, or that your relationship with food is a very clear indicator of your relationship with yourself. And I think that is true. Whether or not you're trying to lose weight, what you put into your body really says a lot about what you think of yourself. And so that's why I read that book. And I love it. I think it's a good book. Go read it if you want to. It's not very dense. It's not like super academic. It's just like a very digestible read. So go try it out. And the post that she's talking about is one of the quotes from the book is live as if you deserve to take up space in your relationship. Live as if you understood that your husband loved you. Live as if the thing that you wanted in your life was already true. If you believed that thing and you lived as though it was fact, what would be different about your life? And I think that's a really good way for us to consider, because we all assume, not all, but many of us assume it's not, we aren't worthy. He doesn't love us. It's not going to work, that sort of thing. And then we live as though that's true. But really, like either one could be true. And we tend to pick the one that feels painful because it feels safe. But what we don't realize is that we're just signing up for pain.
Yes. So I am reading right now The Road Less Traveled.
Okay.
Just started it. And this morning, I wish I had brought it in here, but this morning, I read a little bit about, he's talking about the value that we learn about ourselves as children as we're developing. And we're reading, right now, I'm reading about delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't feel secure in our future, we want that instant, like we want to feel good right now in the moment because we're not sure of what's going to happen further on. And so I kind of loved that. And I have to say that that book of Geneen Roth's, I absolutely loved the image I created in my mind of sitting in a circle with a bunch of women with food in front of you and like not being able to eat it, or the whole, if you haven't read the book, and it's a fun light read, but that just came to my mind because I do love reading books, and for a long period in my life I just told myself I didn't have time to read books, and I've been reading more books every year in the last 3-4 years. So I love to hear what other people are reading. I have a long list of books that I want to read because of everybody else's recommendations. But is there a book or a resource that you would recommend for people wanting to start searching for some relief in how they feel about their marriage?
Yeah. I love all of Glennon Doyle's books. I don't agree with everything that's in all of them, but for the most part, her message is like reconnect with yourself and be true to who you are. Untamed in particular is a really good book for that. I love that book. I also love anything by Brene Brown. I know those are kind of the heavy hitters in our industry anyways, but I love both of those books. And then the Gottman books are really useful for anything marriage. Those are kind of like the go-to people. And Maggie Reyes has a book, like about a book full of questions to ask your spouse, the kind of like on date night. So that I don't remember what it's called, but I think it's like 100 questions to ask or something like that. She's an excellent resource. And then this might be unpopular in life coach school land, but I actually think reading the love languages is a great idea as long as you flip it on your head and figure out how you like to be loved. Right? So we read the love languages as information for how do I receive love? How can I give myself that kind of love? And we can like know what our spouses or our partners' love language is just for the fun of it, but we don't want to hold ourselves accountable for giving them love in that way. So you just want to be like, what does it feel like best for me to have love? So for me, like it's love letters or like words of affirmation. So I'll like write myself notes, or I'll do things like that. Or sometimes I'll ask my husband, I'm like, hey, you forgot to tell me that I look awesome today. He's like, you're right, you do look awesome. And so I seek that kind of support out for myself because I know that's what resonates the most for me.
So good. I love that because that book, The Five Love Languages, was a book that was recommended for us to read from a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
which I was like, yes, you're telling us both to read a book together because I am
Uh-huh.
always trying to get him to read a book with me. And um, even with the direction of a therapist, it wasn't successful in getting him to read it. But
Yes.
for me, for me, it was, some eye-opening, uh, just to really start digging into what does make you tick, what makes you feel love, and yeah, how can you do that for yourself? And I love um, your your advice of like, I just will ask him for some affirmation. I don't need to like wait for him to give it to me. And I think it helped me a lot to, even though he didn't want to be a part of reading it, it helped me to be more insightful in how he shows love,
Mm-hmm.
and to be more in tune with that, to be able to, it doesn't mean that that really makes me feel full of love, but to acknowledge that and recognize that him going and getting my car washed is something I don't like to do. And he did it for me, or grocery shopping, and recognizing what his love language might be.
Yep.
Um, so, so then a couple more things. I would love to hear a little bit about your brother, who I just found out this morning is also a life coach, or maybe he's in the process of getting
He's in
certified.
certification right now. He'll be done the first
Okay.
week of April. But
Okay.
I'm mentoring him through taking on like free clients. But so anybody who is interested in life coaching and just kind of wants to have a taste of it, um, he's doing free sessions and I'm helping him. He'll send me some questions and sometimes I'll help him review his sessions and like teach him how to do it. He's very good at meeting with dudes. So his ultimate thing is like, because he's like a super manly guy, like he's giant and he's got a full beard and like so he's not like the traditional like life coach persona, which I think
Right.
is really helpful for men. Because like I mean, of course a woman can help a man too. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes it's nice to have someone who's you identify with just right from the beginning. And so the long-term plan for us is like we may do marriage retreats together because he wants to do marriage also, but he wants to help the guy and I help the women and it's gonna be a dream team.
Oh, I love that because how would that not be good? I
It's gonna
mean,
be
that,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. I love that. So good for you. That's very exciting. And to have you as a mentor, come on. Like, how
I
nice
know,
is
like
that?
I always tell him he's very lucky because I've done all the work first.
Yeah.
So
Well, and how like awesome to be able to develop your relationship together. I
I
mean, I
know
don't know,
it's
maybe
so
you were
fun.
really, yeah, maybe you were really close anyway, but to have something even more in common that you love talking about.
Yeah.
Uh, so if there's someone out there interested in talking to you about how you can help them, tell us how they can get a hold of you.
Okay. Yeah. So my website is CandiceToone.com, just my name, Candice with an I. And if you want to get a sample of one of the types of activities that I do in my group, you can click on the Start Here button. It will send you a video and a worksheet just for free that kind of gives you a sense of how we work together. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook both as Candice Toone Coaching, again, Candice with an I. And if you want to hook up with my brother, I mean, he's married. I mean, like hook up with him as a coach is like his link for free coaching is in my Instagram bio. So
Oh,
if,
I like
if
that.
there's women that want something, you can click my Start Here button on my website. And if there's guys that kind of want to see what it's about, it's right there in my bio on Instagram.
To be able to get in on somebody's, when they're launching their business and they're offering free coaching, uh, what that is for. It's not like you being used as a like experiment.
No.
It's for them to learn a little bit about what their potential, their ideal client is struggling with and how to help them better.
Mhm.
So it's a beautiful
Plus, you get
opportunity.
excellent service for no money. So it's like, it's a win-win. They get to
Right.
learn about their clients and you get to experience awesome coaching
Yeah.
just for
Yeah.
the niceness of giving your time.
Well, Candice, it has been fun chatting with
So
you.
fun.
Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your Friday to chat with us. And I look forward to seeing how this all blossoms as your brother and you kind of join together. And I think that's just beautiful.
It's going to be fun. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me. It's nice to meet you and your people.
Thank you so much for listening to the Awaken You podcast. If you enjoyed listening, then you have to go check out my Awaken Your True You one-on-one coaching program where we take all of this material and we apply it to your life. We study it, we take it to your next level so that you can awaken you in your marriage. If you have any questions, any comments, or coaching issues that you'd like to hear on the podcast, please visit me on my website. Together, let's awaken you.